So I got a question the other day from one of my colleagues, and that question was, are podcast listeners coming back to your website? Are they coming back to your website? And I found that to be an interesting question because, I asked myself that question before. I asked myself, are people coming back to subscribe to my list, to subscribe to my clients list? And we put sorry about the palm tree. We put a lot of time into transcripts. We put a lot of time into show notes for our clients. You'll often hear podcasters say, you can find these resources in the show notes. They'll be linked up in the show notes on the website. But, when I think about myself and the podcast I listen to, I don't really go back to the website. I don't really say, I gotta go back and get this this information. It's very rare that I do. If it is, it's something that I kind of I can't really live without, right? And so it's very interesting. It was a very intriguing question, I thought, and I looked around and did a little research, and according to Libsyn, 63% of the 2.6 million downloads from their platform, they're a podcast hosting platform. They host your media. Back in 2014, it was 63% of the 2.6 million downloads were from mobile devices. So what that means to me is that when people are listening to podcasts, they are out and about. They are walking like I am right now, down this beautiful paved sidewalk. They are in the gym. They're out on a jog. They're out on a bike ride. They're doing something active that doesn't allow them to engage in anything else. There's very few people that are sitting in front of the computer, and if they are, maybe those people are actually working on an assignment, or they're in the office getting something done. So that means that they're probably not going back to your website, and that has very, very big implications for podcasters, because if you know anything about marketing, then you know that the money is in the list. You control your email list. There's things that you can't control. iTunes controls your podcast, or your hosting company. If you have a Twitter account or a Facebook page, they own that. It's not your property, but your email list is your property, and that's where you can continue to market and sell to people. So obviously, that's something that you want to be building. It's a very key component of your business. I actually have a client of mine who he has a podcast called The Tao of Inbound, and he put out an episode recently, and one of the biggest things that small businesses, their biggest regret is not building their email list sooner. So you want to be building your email list, and you want to be getting your listeners back to your site. So what does this mean? What are the implications for this if indeed podcast listeners aren't coming back to your website? Well, that means that as podcasters and podcast content creators, we're going to have to get more we're going to have to spend more time and strategy on how we get people effectively back to our blogs and our websites. And it's not enough. I don't believe it's enough to just say, people aren't coming back to your website, because and there's probably people out there that are getting people back to their website and on their email list. But I decided to do a survey. We reached out to a couple of people in the podcast community, in the podcast groups, and they're very responsive, very awesome people in the community, by the way, that are helping out with this project. and we're asking people questions to see if they're indeed going back to websites, and if they are going back to websites, are they subscribed to these lists, or they're reading their emails, because again, if not, then we have to get more creative in terms of how we're getting people back to our websites and our blogs. And it may indeed be that podcasters have to start creating written content, and that's kind of the opposite of what you're hearing, right? Like, you hear podcasting is the new blogging, but if people aren't coming back to your blog, then you're gonna start writing written content. You're gonna have to, or you don't really have a choice, right? So that's just my tidbit, my tip for the week, my thoughts on what's going on in the industry. I will have another industry update, some feedback for you guys, some things that we're seeing in the trenches of podcasting next week, and I look forward to seeing you then. Peace.